Many black Londoners feel unsafe in London, on the streets and in their own homes. And unfortunately, we are correct about that. We've seen an 11-year high in homicides on Sadiq Khan's watch. The number of black victims has risen by over 68% between 2016 and 2020. Over that period, 43% of homicides have been in the black community, when we only represent just over 13% of the population. So while I accept the altered motion, I want it to be made very, very clear. This is a record of failure, of Sadiq Khan's failure. No ifs, no buts, no changes by the Labour group will cover that up. This morning's session has already been very emotional, but for me and my community, this is the issue. My own brother has a 17-year-old son who he will not let out of the house. When I asked my nephew if he wanted to leave the house, he said no. He feels under pressure. He feels unsafe. I met a woman, a black woman, sat in the park with her 19-year-old son watching him skateboard. And when I said to her, "Are you proud of the skateboard?" and she said, "I've never been so bored in my life, but this is my only way of keeping him safe." I want you to understand what this means for the black community. We have people who will not let their children at homes. For us, this is a social mobility issue. It is hard, nigh impossible, to get our children to focus on school and personal development and their life, because they're correct when they say their lives are in danger. And when we try to change the focus of this and make it a national issue and start putting in the figures that are happening across the country, there's two things I want to say. The increase in the murder rate amongst the black community nationally has been largely funded by what's going on here in London. So it is not a defence. And secondly, the Mayor of London's concern should be here in London. We should be focusing on London. There's a theme emerging from these sessions. The Mayor acting like he has no power at all. He cannot do anything. If that's the case, move over. This is a matter of life and death. We know the issues behind this. This phenomenon is not simple. But even when you take gang activity into account and deprivation, black Londoners are still 3 times more likely to be murdered than their neighbours. Something is amiss. So when we call on the Mayor, not the Home Secretary, the Mayor of London, who's the Police and Crime Commissioner for London, it is his job to review his policies. In this area, we are correct. We have to focus on the Mayor. Black Londoners, our communities are looking to the Mayor to make this change. There's 101 different things he could do, but we know this, what he's done up till now has failed. So when we hear about record spend, we don't want to hear about record spend, we want to hear about record impact. Remember this, I spoke to a boy in Croydon. I've been a youth worker for over 25 years. Somebody contacted me and asked me to speak to this boy. So I went and I met him and we talked about the prevalence of carrying a knife. And he said to me, "Shaun, you cannot persuade me to put down my knife until you answer this question. Who is doing something about the murderers in our midst?" This young boy spoke to me with what sounded like a book title. And he said, "So when you ask me not to carry my knife, I ask you, who's asking everybody else not to carry a knife? That is the job of the Mayor of London, not anybody else." That is the job of Mayor of London. So though I've accepted the altered motion, I want to make it very clear, this is the Mayor's job. This is all of our jobs. And if you're sat at home now thinking this is a problem for the black community, it is not. It's a problem for us all. My good friend's son, Sven, was murdered less than 4 months ago. He is not black. Good boy. Working, doing all the things that we hope our children do, murdered in the streets. We've got to do something about this. And our first port of call, because we are London Assembly members, is the Mayor. So anything else is a distraction. It's a political game. And you and your actions in this chamber this morning You need to be able to look black Londoners in the face and say to them, I'm not using you for political point scoring. I'm trying to help you keep your entire community safe. We are terrified. Somebody needs to do something about this. Thank you, Chair.